Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Cait and I am a 4th year business science student at the University of Cape Town. And I'm so excited for today's video because if you haven't already seen by the title, today is a storytime video all about my exchange. Before we get any further into this video, if you haven't already got a really nice drink with you and maybe a snack as well, then pause the video and go and grab yourself one, because today's video is going to be so exciting and it's going to be worth sitting through, I promise. I'm going to tell you all about my exchange when I was in grade 10, and I will also be popping up pictures of the different places that I went to and the different things that I did, because it was such an amazing experience and I really have been wanting to share this video with you for a long time. And so today is the day that you will be experiencing coming through this journey with me as we look back at my exchange from 2018. So I've got my cup of coffee and let's get going into this video. So I had the immense privilege in my grade 10 year, in October of my grade 10 year, which was in 2018, to be picked out of quite a few people from my school to go on this amazing thing called exchange. And I was very keen to do it. I really wanted to go and experience a new life and experience different cultures and learn more about other people from other parts of the world. I am very lucky that I get to travel overseas with my family, but I was so keen to go to a new place that I hadn't been to before, a place that was rich in diversity, and it was a very different place, a place that I was not used to, a place that was so far from the lifestyle I live in Joburg. So I went to a beautiful little, and I'm not kidding when I say little, and I'm not kidding when I say centre of Australia, a place called Alice Springs. And honestly, it is far from the lifestyle that I live in Joburg, but it was so nice to be able to see the world through other people's eyes and to experience a new part of life, to go to so many different places. Obviously, because I chose that I wanted to go on exchange, I was extremely over the moon and excited to start this new journey and adventure. But there was like a few nerves inside of me, nerves for leaving my family behind for the longest period of time that I'd been away from them, nerves for going to a new country, a new continent, because I'd never been to Australia before, and nerves for staying in someone else's house for like an extended period of time. So nerves were definitely playing a part, but I always like to say that nerves play a part when you really care about what you're doing and you really want to make sure that it works out and that things go well. So I think that's why I was feeling really nervous. But yeah, I got so much out of the experience, so the nerves were worth it, I guess, because I was doing something new. So before we jump into everything that I did there, I just wanted to give you a little backstory of like how long I went for and some of, like, I guess, logistical things behind my exchange. So I went to Alice Springs for 6 weeks, which was probably the longest period of time that I'd been away from my family, and I think it is still the longest period of time I've been away from my family up to today, and this is 6 years later. So 6 weeks is a long period of time, and also Alice Springs was 8 hours ahead of Joburg or South Africa time, so there was also a lot of time difference, and so also like jet lag, and that was also something interesting for me to navigate. Well, I'd been to America, which was a big time delay, but I was with my family in America and I was with a whole bunch of friends in America, so that kind of jet lag and that time difference wasn't as drastic. It didn't feel as drastic as the one that I experienced when I went to Alice Springs. So I went to stay with a beautiful family. They had 3 kids. So the oldest kid, which was her name was Casey, and she was my exchange student, I guess, and she was 1 year older than me. And then there was Jess, who was younger than me, and Harvey, who was also younger than me. So I wasn't in the same year as my exchange student, which was also something, I guess, quite nice, because it meant that I made friends with her friends, but I also made friends with people in my own year, and people that I still see on Instagram, Facebook, and try and keep in contact with every once in a while, which is really cool. And I went to a school called St. Philip's College, which is in Alice Springs, and yeah, such a beautiful community, and beautiful to be surrounded by so many of those people. The crazy thing is that Alice Springs is actually made up of it's not majority made up of Australians, which was interesting for me to figure out once I got there. It actually has a lot of Americans, but also other foreigners, because there is I think it's a US military base in Alice Springs. So a lot of people come down, a lot of Americans specifically, come down to Alice Springs for a certain period of time while their parents or someone in their family is at the military base. So it was so cool to also obviously interact with a lot of Australians, but also interact with people from other countries as well, especially because, like Americans, I hadn't really interacted with a lot of Americans in my life, so that was really, really cool. So normally the typical thing with exchange programs is that normally you go to the country and stay with the exchange family or like a boarding house, and then you have an exchange student that comes back to your place and stays with you for a certain period of time. But in my case, that wasn't what happened. So I went to go and stay with this beautiful family for 6 weeks, but Casey had already been on exchange to, I can't remember where exactly she went. I think it was Italy, if I'm not mistaken, but she had already gone on exchange the year before. So she didn't come back to South Africa with me, and so because we actually don't have enough space in our house for another person, so it worked out really well that I got to experience exchange through going to Australia and staying with them, but we didn't have anyone come back to stay with us, which was, I guess, a pro and a con. Pro being that we didn't have space in our house, but con being that I didn't get to show anyone around South Africa and around my school and like the place I'd lived for like my entire life. So I've just written a few notes on my phone because obviously it was so long ago, and I had to go back and scroll through Facebook to double check some of the information. So anyways, when the trip started, we started in Joburg, and I was the only one that was going from my school to St. Philip's College or to Alice Springs. So it was and it was a long journey. It was a long journey because I went up to Dubai, from Joburg to Dubai, and then went Dubai to, I think it was Melbourne, and then Melbourne to Alice Springs. And the reason that I did it that way was because if I'd gone direct from Joburg to Australia, I would have had to stay overnight in, I think it was Perth I was supposed to stay overnight in. And obviously as a 16-year-old girl traveling on my own, that was not the best option for me to stay overnight somewhere. So that's why we decided to go all the way to Dubai and then lay over to Australia that way. And also there's only one flight to Alice Springs per day, which is crazy to think about, but it just shows how remote it is. So that's why we also had to make sure that we obviously got that one flight a day. And in total on the way there, I was 24 hours in the air, so 24 hours in any plane that went from Joburg all the way to Australia, and I was 35 hours in transit in total. So this included the layovers that I had to do, and the other airports that I had to stay in. So getting to Alice Springs was kind of a challenge, and it was something that I really had to navigate on my own, and it was something so foreign for me because even though I've traveled overseas quite a lot, I'd never traveled overseas this much on my own and had to do all these layovers on my own. So it was quite an interesting experience, I'm not gonna lie. It was, when I got to Alice Springs, I was so tired and jet lagged as well because of the time difference. I felt sweaty and disgusting. I was obviously full of the emotions because I've just landed in a new country. So I was also really homesick at first, and there were quite a few tears shed in the beginning, and I've just like met my new family that I'm staying with, like come to stay in their house and meet them. And so the whole travel from Joburg to Australia was a very interesting and made me grow up very quickly, I must say. So I landed on a Friday, and so the first few days were quite challenging. I was still really jet lagged, and the silly thing with me is when I struggle to fall asleep or can't get to sleep pretty much instantly, because normally I can fall asleep quite quickly, I start to panic, and then I continue to not be able to sleep. So with the jet lag, I was extremely exhausted. I wanted to sleep, but my body just didn't let me sleep. So the first few days were tough because I was extremely jet lagged. It was also the weekend, so I hadn't started school, I hadn't started making friends and meeting people. I'd obviously been spending time with my exchange family, and they did their utmost best to try and make me feel at home and welcomed in their home. So that was really nice. But I was homesick, I was jet lagged, and I was really tired. So the first few days were really tough, but it just made the experience so much better when eventually everything clicked into place. When I started school on the Monday, just being in that environment and meeting new people, and everyone was so welcoming. Everyone made me feel like I had been there for a long time. Everyone made me feel like I was part of their community and part of their schooling experience, and I absolutely love that. And I really do love making friends, and I love learning about other people's cultures and what other people believe and the lives that other people have lived. So it was, even though it was really tough in the beginning, it just made the whole experience so much better after. I want to start telling you about some of the incredible trips and opportunities that I was given, mainly through the school organized them for me and for the other exchange students, because they were also, there was 2 girls from China, there was a guy from, I think he was from Limpopo, and me, so there were 4 of us exchange students, and we'd never met before obviously, but we spent a lot of time together because we did so many of these trips that the school had organized for us. And one of the most incredible opportunities that we went on was to a place called Uluru, or it's also known as Rock, and it is such a magical and spiritual place to be. It is where all the Aboriginal people originally found themselves, and it's a big rock basically, but every single part of the rock has a different meaning and it has a different spiritual attachment to it. It was such a peaceful and calming place to be. I'll never forget it to this day. To get to Uluru, it is about 2 hours away from Alice Springs, so it is basically in a desert area. Well, Alice Springs is basically a desert area, but you have to travel 2 hours out of Alice Springs in order to get to Uluru. And on the way to Uluru, we stopped at another place called Cait. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing this correctly, but I think that is how you pronounce it. And this is also a really spiritual area on the way to Uluru, and we took tons of pictures there as well. Saw a little bit of the sunset there, and yeah, that was a beautiful place as well, and so you kind of hike a little bit along there. So I had lots of cool things that I did when we were at Uluru. One of the cool things was, first of all, we went on a beautiful sunrise walk around the rock, and that was such a cool experience because, first of all, sunrise was absolutely stunning, and because it is such a peaceful and calming place, you just feel like there's no ways to describe it. You just feel so like like you feel like all the weight's been lifted off of your shoulders. And so I really loved that sunrise walk. And this was after a night of staying in tents. They two-man tents, so I stayed with one of the other girls, and we stayed in tents for the night, and then we did this beautiful sunrise walk. And then that very same day we had the opportunity to pay to see and speak to and hear from an Aboriginal person. So an Aboriginal person, if you are not aware, is someone that originally comes from Australia, and they were the first people on the land in Alice Springs, and the first people on the land in Australia in general. And Isrock is such a significant place for Aboriginal people, because this is where they it's actually crazy. There's parts of the rock you're not allowed to take photos of, and parts of the rock that women don't, not even Aboriginal women know the reason behind why it's spiritual. Only the men know stories behind why it is spiritual. So that's a crazy thing that I remembered. And anyway, so I met this Aboriginal person, and she shared a whole bunch of stories. So she couldn't speak English, so we did have a translator with us, but she shared a whole bunch of stories with us, obviously stories that she was allowed to share. And she showed us some of the, I don't want to call them, they were like, they were weapons. Like she shared the story behind the boomerang and how it's made in such a way like that it kills the animal, and then it comes back to the Aboriginal person, so that they don't have to go and fetch their weapon again. So some really cool stories behind certain objects and things that they used way back in the past, but also still use them now. And it was so eye-opening to spend this time with her and to hear from her, and I don't take it for granted. I honestly think it was one of the best things that I've ever done, and I still think about it today. So I really hope that I can go back to Alice Springs in general, but also back to Uluru, and take my family there to experience what I experienced when I was there. Just the beauty, the raw beauty. It kind of blows my mind that God created such places for on this earth, places that you have to go and find. Obviously, they're not just in plain sight, but places that we can be in such awe of. It astounds me. And I really hope that I can go back one day and experience it again. One of the other things that we did on this weekend away is we went to a place called Kings Canyon, and at this place called Kings Canyon we went on a hike, and we actually went on a hike with a whole bunch of other people that we had met up with as well. There were other students that were on like a gap year in Australia, and were also just traveling around a little bit, and so you basically do a big hike along this mountain, and you see more incredible views of just like open land around us, such raw beauty, again, that I'm astounded that I was able to experience. So some of the things we did on the hike is obviously we hiked along and saw some of the waterfalls, and there were different bridges that we walked along. We took lots of photos. I think some of the other things we did was they told us about different things that happened on the mountain in the past. So also another incredible opportunity that I was given by the school. And all in all, this weekend of going to Katajuta, Kings Canyon and Uluru was probably one of the best weekends I've had in my life, and such incredible experiences that I would never have if I didn't go on this exchange and push myself out of my comfort zone. So I look back on this weekend with fond memories. I made beautiful friends. I got to see beautiful works of nature, and I just don't take it for granted. Another cool experience I had was going to meet a whole bunch of kangaroos and learning about the kangaroos, and just hearing stories of what kangaroos can do. And I wouldn't think of them as majestic animals, but they are such clever animals, and what they can do is incredible. We were really privileged to be able to actually walk around with a baby kangaroo in our arms for a little bit of time. And that was such a cool experience to have the baby kangaroo literally in my arms. I was holding it like I was its mum. You would never have these experiences. So that was just incredible. And just learning about the different kangaroos and taking a whole bunch of photos and seeing them in real life, because obviously I've heard about kangaroos, but I've never seen a kangaroo up close like this, and to be able to hold the kangaroo was just incredible. I unfortunately wasn't able to see any koalas when I was on this trip because Alice Springs is way too hot for koala bears, so I will have to go back to Australia and go and see a koala bear in real life, because I've heard a lot about them. Kangaroos are animals that are so full of character, but they are so clever. And the adults, they may be feisty and full of life, but those baby kangaroos are so soft and gentle, and you just think they wouldn't hurt a soul. So yeah, incredible creatures. I was also given the opportunity to sit on and ride a camel. Let me tell you, camels are interesting creatures. When you sit on them, you bounce up and down, and they are the most weird creatures, I'm not gonna lie. Such weird creatures, but it was so cool to be able to sit on one and actually ride on one. Ride as in you walk very slowly on one, and just to have that feeling is really weird. That it's not like riding a horse, because obviously it's got the humps and they also walk really weirdly. But yeah, we were able to ride a camel. Whilst with my exchange family, they also took me around to a couple of different places in Alice Springs, in and around Alice Springs. One of the places they took me to was called the Alice Springs Desert Park, and this is kind of like a mini game reserve or a mini nature park is the best way that I can describe it. But it is a place where we saw a bird show with a whole bunch of different birds, which was really cool. We once again saw more kangaroos. We saw a whole bunch of different like snakes and spiders. We saw an ostrich. We saw some other animals as well that I just can't remember exactly which ones, but we did see a whole bunch of other animals. And they also did show us some of the things that I saw with the Aboriginal women, some of the tools and weapons that they used, and they gave us like a little show of that as well, and went into a bit more depth in that as well. So the desert park was a cool place to go to learn a bit more about the history of Alice Springs and its surrounding areas, a bit more of the history of the animals in Alice Springs and in Australia. So that was a very cool experience. Another cool place that my exchange family took me to was a place called Simpson's Gap, which is kind of like a foresty, deserty area. It is a gap in between one of the ranges, the West McDonnell Ranges. I've just googled that because I completely forgot. Ranges of mountains, and there's a whole bunch of water there, so you go and you can go in the water, which we didn't go in the water, but you can go in the water. And a fun fact about this part of Alice Springs is, if you've ever watched MasterChef, they did a whole episode of MasterChef at Simpson's Gap, so that was really funny seeing that on MasterChef after I'd been there. They also did an episode in Uluru, so that was also really cool to see them film there as well. But yeah, Simpson Gap's also a really beautiful place that they took me to. So if you can hear that the sound has changed, it's because my mic has died, so I'm sorry for that, but at least you can still hear me, which is good. But let's carry on. So another one of the places that the school took us to on one of their like trips within Alice Springs was the Reptile Center, and we were given the opportunity to have a look at a whole bunch of snakes and have a look at a whole bunch of like bearded dragons and those kind of animals. I obviously did not hold the snake because I am so scared of snakes and spiders, and even seeing them was a bit scary for me, and it wasn't the most incredible thing I'd done because I am petrified of snakes and spiders, but we went to the reptile center, and then we also went to the Royal Flying Doctor Service. The Royal Flying Doctor Service is a non-profit organization that provides emergency and primary healthcare services for those living in rural areas. I have just googled that because I don't want me to show that I was telling the exact right facts. They just showed us some of the planes that they use, the equipment that they use, and they showed us through the years how things have changed as well. So that was a cool place to go to. I think there was a video as well that they showed us from over the years. So it was cool to see how it's changed over the history of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. On my last weekend in Alice Springs, my exchange family took me up to the highest point in Alice Springs, which is called Anzac Hill. And we went during sunset and took a whole bunch of pictures, and like I said, it's the highest point in Alice Springs, so you can see the whole of Alice Springs, and it was such a fun way to, I guess, see the whole of Alice Springs. Funny thing about Alice Springs is that they only have 7 sets of robots in the entire town, and it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to get from one side of Alice Springs to the other side of Alice Springs, which is such a foreign concept for me, because coming from Joburg, like, we have a set of robot on every street corner, and it will take like much longer than that to get from one side of Joburg to the other side of Joburg. So that was a very foreign concept for me, and everyone just seemed to know everyone, which was really cool. And it's just it was such a safe town, and honestly just, yeah, so foreign for me, a lot of the concepts that they had and the way that people live there. You don't have all this fencing around your houses, and like, we could walk home from school. We took the bus home from school every day, which was really cool. And just some things that I never would have in South Africa, I was able to experience in Alice Springs, and just be engraved in my head for my entire life. I just had to add as well that something that was really cool at St. Philip's College, the school that I went to, was they had food tech classes. And it's basically classes where you're learning all about food and you're cooking, and really up my alley. We made such cool things. We made sausages from scratch. We made spaghetti from scratch. We made cookies from scratch. We made so many things from scratch, and we learned so much whilst on the experience as well. I really wish that my school had done food tech and given us the opportunity to do that, because I think it's so worthwhile. But I was so happy that I was able to do food tech, and learn to cook such beautiful food as well. So just had to share that with you. I was also given the opportunity to carry on playing some tennis at the local tennis courts in Alice Springs, so managed to keep up with that, especially because I absolutely love tennis. It was so nice to be able to take one of my hobbies from South Africa over to Australia and still be able to play for 6 weeks. Another opportunity to make more friends, and obviously exercising is so important for me that it was so great to be able to move my body in that kind of way. On the very last night in Alice Springs, we organized for Casey and I and a whole bunch of our friends to go and grab some dinner before. We had those beautiful pot stickers and the iced tea, and then we went to the local theatre to watch The Grinch, actually, as our last evening together, so that I could spend some time with them before I left. I made such beautiful friends in Alice Springs that I will never forget them. And I cherish them, and even though I may not be in contact with them all the time, I just know that they really made my experience so much better. Coming from Joburg and obviously being really nervous to come to a new place and a new continent and a new country and just a new, It was so amazing to feel so welcomed by such beautiful people, such beautiful friends, such a beautiful family to go and stay with. And so this last night was so nice. We went for dinner at one of the fancier restaurants in Alice Springs with my exchange family, and it was just such a nice way to top off the experience and to just end off what had been such an amazing 6 weeks filled with so many experiences and opportunities and things that I would never have dreamed of experiencing. So I feel incredibly privileged and grateful to have had the opportunity to go on exchange at such a young age as well, and to make such beautiful memories in so early on in life as well. My trip home from Alice Springs was also a really interesting one, because I went from Alice Springs to Sydney, and then I went to Bangkok, and then to Dubai, and then to Joburg. And I actually didn't know that I would be taking 4 flights. I thought I was only going to be taking 3 flights. So when I got from Alice Springs to Sydney, I was obviously sad because I was leaving Alice Springs after an amazing 6 weeks. I was excited to see my family. So I was crying on this train, like as we were driving off of on the tarmac back to the airplane. And I went to go and find out where I needed to go to make sure my bags had gone onto the next plane, and to make sure that I was going to the right place. And this lady took my boarding pass and literally ripped it up. I was in shock. I didn't know what was happening. I'm like, are you making sure that I stay in Australia? Have I done something wrong? Why are you ripping up my boarding pass? Anyway, she passes me my boarding pass back, and this is a new boarding pass that she has printed for me. They'd upgraded me to business class. Business class. Now, if you've never been on a business class flight, it is way different than economy. I was given 3-course meal, which was delicious. I was offered champagne, but obviously I was underage, so I couldn't take that. We had snacks galore. I had a seat that reclined back so I could actually sleep, and this was for the longest period of the flight. And also, I didn't know I was taking this flight. I didn't know I was going from Sydney to Bangkok. So I was kind of shocked when that happened. And I actually think it was from Sydney to Bangkok, then to Dubai as well. I was on business class. So it was for the longest portion of the flight, I was in business class. Incredible. It made I was so emotional at that point of like going home, that it just made it like so much more comfortable and so much better. And on the way back, so it was 4 flights, and I only thought I was taking 3. So I took 4 flights, and I was 39 hours in transit. 39 hours. So I think coming to the end of this video, I just want to say to anyone that has the opportunity and is thinking about going on exchange, that it is 100% one of the best things that I've ever done in my entire life. I will never forget the memories that I made on exchange, and even though it really pushed me out of my comfort zone because it was such a different place, and obviously it's something so new to move away from your family for such a long period of time and to live with another family, I'm telling you, it is worth it. I will never regret taking the opportunity to go on exchange and for stepping out of my comfort zone. It was just such a beautiful experience, and it is okay to feel nervous. It really is. I felt nervous, but nerves are good. Nerves mean you care. Nerves mean that you want it to go well. I personally believe that. And so I say go for it. I say take the leap and jump and go on exchange and put your name out there, put yourself out there, because what's the worst that can happen? You come back and you've spent a certain period of time in another country. I promise you it is worth going. And so here's my way of saying, just do it. Just do it. Just apply for the exchange. So I really hope I haven't left anything out from my exchange, but I think I've covered every single thing that I could think of sharing with you guys. But I really hope that you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please really subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you're aware of future videos. And please leave me a comment and let me know if maybe you've been on exchange or something similar to exchange, and share some of your experiences as well. I love you so very much, and I will see you in my next video.